It's probably just anxiety again, Mom said, barely looking up from her phone as I clutched my chest, trying to catch my breath. You always do this when you're stressed. I was 19, and this was the third time this week I'd felt the crushing pain in my chest. Each episode was getting worse, but my parents had mastered the art of dismissal. Mom, this feels different, I gasped, steadying myself against the kitchen counter. It's like someone's sitting on my chest. Dad walked in, coffee mug in hand, rolling his eyes at the scene before him. Olivia, enough with the dramatics. Your mother's right, it's anxiety. Maybe if you spent less time worrying about everything, you'd feel better. I wanted to scream. For months, I'd been telling them something was wrong. The shortness of breath during my morning runs, the dizziness that came out of nowhere, the way my heart would race even when I was sitting still. But in our family, physical complaints were always met with the same response. Stop being dramatic. I'm going to urgent care, I announced, grabbing my keys. Don't waste your money, Dad called after me. Take a deep breath and go lie down. This is exactly why we can't take you seriously. You overreact to everything. I ignored him, walking to my car despite the tightness in my chest. The urgent care doctor listened to my symptoms with a frown, immediately ordering an EKG. Unlike my parents, she didn't dismiss my concerns. Your EKG shows some irregularities, she said, her expression serious. I'm referring you to a cardiologist. This needs to be checked out properly. When I got home, clutching the referral paper, my parents were watching TV in the living room. The doctor says I need to see a cardiologist, I said, my voice shaking. The EKG showed something's wrong. Mom sighed dramatically. Those urgent care doctors just want to run up bills. You're 19, Olivia. What could possibly be wrong with your heart? Your mother's right, Dad added. They're probably just being overcautious because you worked yourself up so much. We're not wasting money on unnecessary tests. That night, lying in bed, I felt the familiar tightness return. But this time, it was accompanied by a shooting pain down my left arm. Terror gripped me as I remembered reading about heart attack symptoms. With trembling fingers, I called my best friend Anna. I'm coming to get you, she said immediately after I described what was happening. Don't argue. 20 minutes later, I was in Anna's car, heading to the emergency room. I'd left a note for my parents, but they were both heavy sleepers. They probably wouldn't find it until morning. The ER doctor took one look at my symptoms and immediately ordered a series of tests. As I lay there, connected to monitors, I couldn't help but think about all the times my parents had dismissed my concerns. The childhood asthma they'd insisted was just me being out of shape. The severe migraines they'd attributed to too much screen time. By morning, my phone was buzzing with angry messages from my parents. How dare you go to the ER without telling us? Mom's text read. Do you have any idea how much this is going to cost? But their anger turned to confusion when the cardiologist, Dr. Martinez, came in with my test results. Her face was serious as she looked at the monitors and my chart. Olivia, she said, you have a condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. It's a congenital heart condition that affects the heart's electrical system. The symptoms you've been experiencing, they weren't anxiety. Your heart has an extra electrical pathway that's causing dangerous arrhythmias. I felt a mix of validation and fear. All those times I'd known something was wrong, I'd actually been right. The cardiologist continued explaining, but I was distracted by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. My parents had arrived, and from their faces, I could tell they'd heard enough to know they'd made a terrible mistake. How serious is this? Mom asked, her voice small, all traces of dismissiveness gone. Dr. Martinez turned to them, her expression stern. If left untreated, WPO can be life-threatening. Olivia needs surgery to correct the abnormal pathway. She's lucky she came in when she did. These episodes she's been having, they weren't panic attacks. Her heart was literally short-circuiting. I watched as the color drained from my parents' faces. Dad, who had never taken my dramatic episodes seriously, looked like he might collapse. Mom's hands were shaking as she reached for my bed rail. We thought, she began, but Dr. Martinez cut her off. You thought she was overreacting, the doctor said firmly. Unfortunately, I see this too often. Young people's health concerns being dismissed until something serious happens. Olivia needs support right now, not judgment. For the first time in my life, my parents were completely silent. The next few days in the hospital were a strange reversal of everything I'd known. My parents, who had spent years dismissing my health concerns, suddenly transformed into hypervigilant guardians. Mom barely left my bedside, obsessively writing down every word Dr. Martinez said. Dad spent hours researching Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome on his phone, asking the nurses endless questions about my vital signs. Their guilt was palpable, manifesting in different ways. Mom kept crying at random moments, especially when she thought I was sleeping. "We should have listened," I heard her whisper to Dad one night. "All those times she told us something was wrong." Dad dealt with it by trying to take control of the situation, demanding second opinions and questioning every medication the nurses brought. It was almost suffocating, this sudden swing from complete dismissal to overwhelming concern. "The surgery is scheduled for Thursday," Dr. Martinez announced during her morning rounds. "We'll perform a cardiac ablation to correct the abnormal pathway. The success rate is high, but like any heart procedure, there are risks we need to discuss." As she explained the procedure, I noticed Mom's hands trembling as she took notes. Dad had gone completely pale, his usual confident demeanor shattered. "And you're sure this has been there since birth?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. "All this time?" Dr. Martinez nodded. DUPW is a congenital condition. The symptoms often become more pronounced in the late teens or early 20s, which explains why Olivia's episodes have been getting worse. I thought about all the warning signs we'd ignored. The time I'd nearly passed out during my high school graduation ceremony, which they'd blamed on me not eating enough breakfast. The countless morning runs I'd had to cut short because my heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. "You're just out of shape," they'd said. "Maybe if you exercised more regularly." Anna visited that afternoon, bringing my laptop and some books. Unlike my parents, she always believed me when I said something was wrong. She'd be the one to drive me to the ER that night, not questioning my judgment for a second. "Your mom cornered me in the hallway," she said, settling into the chair beside my bed. She was crying, asking if I'd noticed any symptoms they'd missed. I didn't have the heart to tell her about all the times you called me instead of them, because you knew they wouldn't take you seriously. I sighed, adjusting my position to ease the pressure of the heart monitors. "They're trying to make up for it now, I guess." "Better late than never," Anna replied, but her tone suggested she wasn't ready to forgive them either. That evening, I overheard my parents talking to Dr. Martinez outside my room. They thought I was sleeping, but their voices carried through the partially open door. "Could this have been prevented if we caught it earlier?" Mom's voice was thick with tears. "The condition itself is congenital," Dr. Martinez explained patiently, "but yes, the severity of these episodes might have been managed better with earlier intervention. The important thing now is to focus on Olivia's treatment and recovery." "We just didn't think," Dad started. "That's right, you didn't think." Dr. Martinez's voice was firm but not unkind. "Your daughter knew her body was telling her something was wrong. She needed you to believe her, not dismiss her." The silence that followed was heavy with realization. Later that night, as I pretended to sleep, Mom sat beside my bed, gently holding my hand. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, thinking I couldn't hear. "We failed you. We were so busy telling you to stop being dramatic that we didn't see you were actually fighting to tell us something was wrong." Dad stood by the window, his silhouette rigid against the city lights. I'd never seen him look so defeated. He'd always been the one to tell me to toughen up, to stop looking for attention. Now he looked like he aged 10 years in 3 days. The next morning, Dr. Martinez came to do final checks before the surgery. As she explained the procedure again, I noticed something had shifted in my parents' demeanor. They were still worried, still guilty, but there was something else now. A determination to do better, to be better. "We'll be right here when you wake up," Mom promised, squeezing my hand as the nurses prepared to take me to pre-op. Dad, who had never been good with emotional moments, simply kissed my forehead, something he hadn't done since I was a little girl. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I caught one last glimpse of my parents. They stood together, supporting each other, looking nothing like the dismissive, impatient people who had ignored my symptoms for so long. They looked scared, vulnerable, and finally, ready to listen. The surgery was successful, but recovery brought its own set of challenges. My parents, determined to make up for years of dismissal, swung to the opposite extreme. Mom monitored my every breath, And Dad installed a medical alert system in the house despite Dr. Martinez assuring them it wasn't necessary. Mom, I can walk to the bathroom by myself, I protested 2 weeks after returning home. The doctor said I should resume normal activities gradually. But what if something happens? She hovered nearby, ready to catch me if I so much as stumbled. What if your heart? Then I'll tell you, I interrupted firmly, just like I've been telling you for months that something was wrong. The difference is this time I know you'll listen. Her face crumpled at that, the guilt still fresh. Dad, who'd been pretending to read the newspaper, set it down with a heavy sigh. We deserve that, he said quietly. Every bit of it. During my follow-up appointment, Dr. Martinez reviewed my recovery progress. My parents sat beside me, taking notes and asking questions, actually listening this time. Your heart is responding well to the ablation, she said, showing us my latest test results. The irregular pathway has been successfully treated. However, she turned to my parents, we need to discuss the anxiety issues that may arise during recovery. Mom started to protest, probably wanting to deny any suggestion of anxiety, but caught herself. I saw the effort it took for her to stay quiet and listen. Many patients who've had their symptoms dismissed develop anxiety about being believed when they report health concerns, Dr. Martinez explained. It's important to create an environment where Olivia feels safe expressing her concerns without fear of being dismissed. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. We've been reading about that, he admitted. About how dismissing physical symptoms can cause emotional damage. The support group has been really helpful, Mom added, referring to the online community of DBPU parents they joined. Hearing other families' stories, realizing how many other parents made the same mistakes we did. 3 months after the surgery, I was cleared to return to college for the spring semester. The night before I left, I found Mom in my room, organizing my medication and emergency contact lists. I've programmed all the nearby hospitals into your phone, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. And I've marked all the 24-hour pharmacies near campus. Mom, I touched her arm, stopping her nervous organizing. I'm okay now. You don't have to overcompensate for before. She sat down on my bed, tears filling her eyes. When I think about how close we came to losing you because we wouldn't listen. But you're listening now, I said, sitting beside her. That's what matters. Dad appeared in the doorway, carrying a small box. Got you something for school, he said gruffly, trying to hide his emotion. Inside was a new Apple Watch with heart monitoring capabilities. It's not because we don't trust you to know your own body, he added quickly. It's just an extra tool, if you want it. I hugged him, feeling him relax slightly. Thanks, Dad. The changes in my family weren't just about medical attention. They started really hearing me in other areas too. When I mentioned wanting to switch my major from business, their choice, to psychology, my passion, they actually listened to my reasoning instead of dismissing it. You want to help other people whose symptoms have been dismissed, Mom said thoughtfully, to be the voice you needed. We'll support whatever path you choose, Dad added, surprising me. We've learned the hard way what happens when we don't listen to you. A year after my surgery, I stood in front of a support group for young people with invisible illnesses, sharing my story. My parents sat in the back of the room, at my invitation, listening as I described the journey from dismissal to diagnosis. The hardest part wasn't the physical pain, I told the group. It was not being believed. But I've learned that sometimes it takes a crisis for people to change, to really start listening. After the meeting, a teenage girl approached us with her parents. Your story, it's exactly what we're going through, her mother said, wiping tears. We've been telling her it's just stress. I watched as my parents shared their perspective, openly acknowledging their mistakes and what they've learned. Dad, who once dismissed every medical complaint as dramatic, was now earnestly explaining the importance of believing your children's health concerns. The surgery fixed my heart, I added, but what really healed was the way my family learned to listen. Sometimes the scariest symptoms aren't physical. They're the ones that show up in relationships when trust has been broken. That evening, driving home, Mom turned to me from the passenger seat. You know, Olivia, you've taught us more than any doctor could. You taught us that listening isn't just about hearing words. It's about believing, supporting, and respecting someone's experience. Dad nodded from the back seat, and we'll never stop learning that lesson. I smiled, feeling my heart beat steadily in my chest, strong, healthy, and finally, truly heard.